Well, this is the Q&A podcast, and I'm your host, Peter Slen. Thanks for joining us. Our guest this week is media mogul Barry Diller. His memoir is titled Who Knew? And our conversation begins shortly. Barry Diller was raised in Beverly Hills. He worked his way from the William Morris Agency mailroom to the head offices of Fox, Paramount, Home Shopping Network, and Expedia, among other companies. And as he says, he has been able to influence the media culture of the United States for the past 50 years. He is the founder or creator or the greenlighter of many things we know today: the movie of the week, the television miniseries, including Roots, The Simpsons, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Star Wars, etc., etc. His memoir at age 83 is titled Who Knew? Our conversation from his Frank Gehry-designed offices across from the Chelsea Pier in New York City begins now. So Barry Diller, the title of your book, Who Knew? No question mark. What should we take from that?
Well, because these things about titles, it actually popped literally into my head one morning, and I just couldn't get it out. And it was both a question mark and without a question mark. And I thought, I think that's apt. And it wasn't anything more or less than any way I read it, who knew, made sense to me. That's why.
Well, you write in Who Knew that at 80-something, you didn't care what you put in your memoir.
Oh, I cared very much. I mean, I definitely cared. I wrote and rewrote. The best part of writing is rewriting to me. But I wrote it over several years, and every word in it I cared about. Now, I did not care. No, let me say it a different way. I knew it was a good story, because I know about stories. So my whole history is telling stories. And I thought, it's a good story only if I can tell it true. So with that as my guardrail, I thought, I'm not honor that. That's what I have to do. So that's what I cared about.
I've been able to play a part in the cultural landscape of the last 50 years, you write.
God, that's a pretentious statement.
How so, though?
How so do I
that you've been
make
a
that
part
statement?
of the cultural landscape?
Because I was in television at a kind of formative stage. I mean, it wasn't exactly the invention of television, but it was when television was busting out of its half-hour and hour mold into more challenging creative areas. Then I was in the movie business in a period where movies were changing. Then I was back in television, adding an alternative network to kind of the same old that I thought was taking place in the 80s. And then I was back in the movie business. So I've just been around the hoop of, I don't know, we call it, certainly wouldn't call it high culture, for decades.
How did you come up with the concept of movie of the week? Those of us of a certain age remember movie of the week.
Yeah. It was because I thought, I didn't really like series. That series television was kind of static, that the characters really didn't change. If the series was successful, they kind of grew old in their roles. But it was stasis. Nothing really changed because you had to, the format was rigid for both comedies and drama shows. And I thought that stricture, I thought it was just too tight and repetitive. And so I thought, well, what can we do? And since I'd had some experience with, I'm 24 years old, and I had some experience buying movies for ABC, but those also were kind of running out, meaning we couldn't get enough. They weren't making enough movies for us to have enough of a steady diet. And so the idea formed of saying, well, wait, could we make our own movies? Which seemed counterintuitive and dumb by a lot of people who were looking in on this nascent idea, my colleagues at ABC, all of whom were decades older than me. Anyway, I thought, a 90-minute movie every week. Now that's daunting and original. I got the ability to do it. How? Who will ever know those I know those circumstances. It was a moment in time, and ABC would do anything to get attention because it was the third network of the three networks. And so I got the license to do it.
From your book, one of the many wonderful things at ABC was that if you wanted responsibility, you could take it. There were few rules, little governance, and almost no bureaucracy.
Yeah, it's like a candy store. I mean, it was, it was, if you wanted to do something, yeah, you had to convince people to do it, but they'd try anything. And because there was no bureaucracy, I got to build this little movie studio inside a company with no resistance. No one said, well, wait a minute, you're taking office space for all these people and you're building this domain and you're hiring people in all these areas. You have no experience in doing this. You're hiring lawyers? Why would, you're 5 years old. But they let me do it.
Instinct is what I prize, you write, not research or data. Those who try to apply metrics to these basic decisions waste a huge amount of time and money. In the TV and film business, you have no choice but to fly by your instincts alone.
Yes.
Is that still true today?
Oh, yes. You know, now
we measure everything.
Now with technology and data and all of this, but I still say that anything new, you really can't research. And an idea story, meaning something you would want to do that your instincts are part of. There's nothing to guide you other than instinct, because no research or data can tell you whether it's good or not. It's just whether it resonates with you. And if you have the good luck of having a brain that is neither high nor low, and your instincts, when you apply them, are in the, let's call it, broad mainstream of life, you have a chance that it'll resonate with someone else. Chance. But you can never project. You can never say, will they like it? Because how the hell do you know if they'll like it? All you know is whether you'll like it.
How did you go from a nervous breakdown at 19 to head of programming at ABC in less than 10 years?
How did I? Well, I got help that really kind of raised me up. I'm 19, 20 years old when I had this, wasn't
What
it?
happened?
Total collapse.
What happened?
Well, what happened was that I had realized that there were consequences to my sexuality that would preclude me from doing something that I thought I would do and wanted to do. And it's kind of classic. So everything about me is extremely obvious and direct, which is that I, in the middle of the night, I woke up thinking I was paralyzed.
Age 19.
19. And by the way, I was paralyzed, but not paralyzed literally. I was paralyzed because of this sexual confusion and all these issues in my life. The result was I went into such extreme anxiety that the only way out for me at that moment was medication. I wasn't hospitalized. I didn't have that kind of breakdown, but I certainly was for several years at kind of max doses of tranquilizers. And what brought me out of it was tackling those issues with the help of a really good doctor. And I wouldn't say ever coming to quote terms. I don't know that you ever come to quote terms with anything. But he kind of brought me up. And out of it, look, I'm very lucky because my biology is very strong. And my biology in the end saved me.
What was your first job?
I'm 19 also, and this was before that episode. And I had always been interested in the entertainment business, but I'm 19, I know no one's going to pay attention to me. And I didn't want to go to university. And so I thought, well, I like the entertainment industry, and there's this mailroom in a theatrical agency, and they give jobs to people who are interested in the entertainment business, and they percolate in that environment, and many of them go on at some point, maybe they become agents, but then they go out into all the various fields of entertainment. I never wanted to be an agent. I never thought I could qualify for that. But what I did get very lucky was that I got to read the file room. At the time, there were file rooms.
This is at William Morris.
At William Morris Agency, which had the history of the entertainment business. It had been in business for 70 years, so it had, and it was the leading agency, so it had all of the history, not all, but a large swath of the history of the entertainment business, and I read every file. So I had such great grounding. That was my first job. It wasn't a job. It was like going to Oxford to read.
You refer to the William Morris Agency as the Jewish Vatican.
Yeah.
Why?
Because it was populated then. I don't know about now, probably so, but they were all short, mostly Jewish, and they were very incestuous and inbred. And it was kind of like the mother church, if you were inside it.
How'd you get inside?
Well, I grew up in Beverly Hills, and most of my parents' friends were in the entertainment business, and one of my closest friends' father was a superstar, Danny Thomas, at that time in television.
Early 60s?
This is mid 60s. No, actually it is early 60s. And I called him up and said, this is what I want to do. And since he was their biggest client, it was a phone call.
And Marlo Thomas, you grew up?
Yes, Marlo was my very close friend, as was her sister and brother. The whole family was kind of my putative other family.
Now, you described your childhood, Mr. Diller, as privileged and unsupervised. Did you realize at the time what a bubble you kind of lived in Beverly Hills?
I had no clue. Absolutely oblivious to everything else. I mean, when you grow up in one environment and you have no exposure to anything else, you have no objectivity. So I grew up in this, and it was a small town, Beverly Hills, less so today, but it was not that many people, and the borders, there weren't big fences, but you didn't really go outside the borders of Beverly Hills. I didn't until I was in my probably mid-teens, late teens. So this hothouse environment I lived inside of, it didn't seem hothouse to me. It just seemed, well, this is life.
How was it that your family was able to live in Beverly Hills? What did your dad do?
My father and his brother were in the construction business in first in Northern California and then in Southern California. And they built a great deal of the post-war housing in almost every part of Southern California.
So if we drove through the San Fernando Valley today, you could see Diller houses?
You'd see Berrydale, Dillerdale, all members of my family have streets named after them that I suppose still must exist. So yeah, they built a lot of the San Fernando Valley, a lot of Covina, West Covina, the inland kind of area, Orange County, all sorts of places.
How would you describe your parents?
lovely, decent, clueless about being parents, because they really didn't have parents. They didn't have parenting. And so they were perfectly decent, nice, kind folk, but they just had no clue about what being a parent was supposed to be. So.
And money never an issue?
No. I don't really think we talked much about money in our family. That I can't be too sure my memory's right about. But there was no lack of it. And for me, unlike my friends who had discipline and who had little jobs they would do or had an allowance, I never had an allowance. I mean, I looked at my friends and said, oh, isn't that nice? You actually have responsibility and an allowance and whatever. I had no such thing. And meaning it wasn't that I was deprived, I just, whatever I needed, I got. And so I never had those standards. So money has never had any resonance for me. It's just not something it's not that I'm happy that I seem to have a lot of resources. But it's never been a determinant for anything I've ever done. It just doesn't have it's just like when you ask about growing up in this little enclave I grew up in and how it related to the rest of the outer world where it didn't for me. So too is this very odd thing that money has never had any resonance for me either.
You tell in Who Knew your mother's backstory. What
Yes.
happened to her?
When I was growing up, the understanding was that my mother's father died when she was 3 in an accident on a streetcar in San Francisco. This is in the 1920s, probably, somewhere around there. Anyway, and that her mother, after her father died, and they did not have any, they were poor, and her mother married a wealthy man who did not want to have children, and so my grandmother put my mother in an orphanage where she stayed until she was 16 years old. And so the idea was, what a horrible thing this grandmother, my mother's mother, did. And that was all I knew. We didn't really discuss very much, but that was an absolute belief. And there's this program called Finding Your Roots. I think it's on PBS, is it?
Henry Louis Gates.
Henry Louis Gates. So last year I do it, and so this is now, I don't know, 50, 60 years after growing up and believing this. And he's going through history and he says, your grandfather, your mother's father, actually committed suicide. He did not die in an accident, and he committed suicide because he was involved in a railway strike, and he thought he was going to be fired and couldn't provide for his family, and he committed suicide. And your grandmother, for 3 years, actually got all sorts of odd jobs to be able to survive. And when she couldn't survive, she put her daughter into an orphanage. It was not, and I was like, oh my God, that's a complete. Now, my question out of that was, did my mother know this? Did she make up this tale because it just suited or sounded better? I suspect that my mother didn't know this, because my mother was not someone who would fabricate a story. I think this was what she was told. So what a revelation that was.
Did she ever tell you?
Never, never, never.
You learned this 60 years later?
I learned this, yeah. I learned this because of Gates and his Finding Your Roots show.
And C-SPAN's Q&A podcast continues in a moment. So in your memoir, lots of bold-faced names. Doris Day, Lana Turner, Lew Wasserman. Lew Wasserman, pretty well known during the Reagan era.
Oh, yes.
As a big
yes,
supporter, a friend of Ronald Reagan's.
Yes, he was actually a Democrat, but he supported, he supported Reagan. But he was a great figure, one of the kind of post-founders. I don't know if that's a contradiction in terms. But he was a great figure of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. He ran a huge company, MCA, which owned Universal, et cetera. And I met him when I was 11 years old because my friend, Lynn, was his daughter.
Tough businessman?
I hung out at their house a lot.
Tough businessman?
Oh, the toughest. The absolute toughest.
In what sense?
Well, he was one of those people, you know, Warren Buffett is like this too, though I don't think people think of him as tough, but Warren Buffett won't negotiate. Lew Wasserman would never negotiate. He would simply say, this is what I want. If you give it to me, fine. If you don't give it to me, don't speak to me. That's a tough businessman.
Well, you write that, quote, you were embarrassingly naive about some business matters, and it was important to you to learn a business from the bowels up.
Absolutely. I think, again, I was very lucky. I think people who come into business at graduated levels of experience, so to speak, but not starting at the beginning of things, they don't get what I got, which was, I'm 24 years old, 25, starting to do this movie project. And so I hired every person. Well, if you hire every person in an enterprise, in a starting enterprise, you have to know what that role is, what that job is, what are the mechanics of it, how do you execute? So being able to get the experience of hiring every person, you learn to be a manager because you know what the jobs are. That is such a benefit as you get up in an organization where actually knowing what's ever happening on the ground is distanced by all the people between you at senior positions and those people who actually do the work. So I think it's the best way to learn to be a manager is to hire every position in a starting enterprise.
There is a term we still use today that I think you are 95% responsible for, miniseries.
Yes, true.
Rich Man, Poor Man.
Yes, we started it actually as a form. I called it the novel for television because I had thought that here television had all this time as against movie theaters where you couldn't sit for more than a couple hours, but television had endless amount of time. So instead of crunching a novel into 2 hours, you could tell a novel in its fullness. So we started with a project, a book called QB7 written by Leon Uris. And then right after we did Rich Man, Poor Man for 12 hours. And then after that we did Roots for 22 hours, I think. And then we did a series of things that then the whole thing ended up being called the miniseries.
How were you able to sell Roots as a miniseries, which was the highest rated, still is probably?
Yeah. Sell it to who? To the people at
your
ABC?
Bosses? To your bosses at ABC?
I didn't have to. I mean, the amazing thing is that, again, there was very little bureaucracy, and I'd been very successful by the time we started doing the novel for television, that when we did the first one, I just ordered it up and put it on the air. And when Alex Haley and David Wolper came into my office to tell me that Alex Haley was writing a book called Roots, I thought, what a wonderful thing for us to to tell this story of Roots. And just hearing it, I don't even know, I'm not sure, there may have been an outline that that he had for the book he was in the middle of writing. And we, I think, helped finance that. We certainly financed it through paying him some money. And then we wrote the scripts and shot it. I didn't have to ask anybody. I had authority to do those things.
Well, you know, we should fill in a gap here. How did you get from William Morris to ABC?
Again, the serendipity of my life. Marlo Thomas was dating an executive at ABC named Leonard Goldberg, who was a lower middle level executive at ABC, who they were just promoting to be the vice president of current programming in Los Angeles. And I had met him through Marlo, and he thought I had some spark and spunk, and he said to me, would you like to be my assistant when I moved to California to take this new role, because he was based in New York. And I said, yeah, that would be better than being in the mailroom. And the day that I said yes, serendipity calls, they fired the czar of ABC, of all of ABC, and they reached down and they picked my guy to be the new head of ABC. And so I moved to New York like a month later, and within months I was kind of running the program department. I mean, where do you go to get that one?
Michael Eisner came into your life at this point.
Yes. Michael Eisner thought that he was going to see my boss, Leonard Goldberg, but it turned out he was in my office. He thought I was, he actually thought I was this other person. And I thought, God, he's impressive, and hired him. And he walked out of my office thinking he'd been hired by, in fact, he'd been hired by his assistant. And that's how I met Michael.
Mr. Diller, is Michael Eisner still a friend?
Oh, a very close friend, yes.
Is he a competitor as well?
No, he's actually on the board of one of our companies and has been for at least 10 years. And he's a very, very good board member.
Well, before we go any further, where are we right now?
Right now we're in this building that we built. It was the first building that Frank Gehry, truly wondrous architect, built in New York. Because I wanted to be close to the water. Actually wanted to build on the water, but I couldn't get a pier to do it. So I got as close as I could, and we built this kind of floating iceberg of a building.
And the original drawing by Frank Gehry is right behind you, I
yes,
believe,
it is.
Isn't it?
Yeah. When I said, we both like boats and sailing, and I said, wow, could we build something that kind of looked like it was sailing? And Frank drew that, which does look like a kind of sailboat. And that was the original idea.
So this is the home of your company, IAC?
Of one of our companies. Actually, it's the home, well, it's not the home of, but it houses several companies that we're engaged with, one of which is Expedia.
What other companies are you involved with today? And what does IAC stand for, by the way?
Interactive Corp.
And that is your umbrella corporation?
It's one. We've actually, it's kind of a conglomerate, anti-conglomerate. We've built up and spun off 11 public companies so far that are all independent of each other, though our family holds interests in many of them still. And IAC has as its principal assets People Inc., which is the largest publisher, print and digital publisher, I think in the United States for certain, with People magazine and dozens of others. And we are a principal shareholder of MGM Resorts.
The 1972 Munich Olympics. You were still at ABC at the time, correct?
I was, yes, I was. Yeah, that was an incredible experience because we had gotten the idea to make a movie called Visions of 8, I think it was called. We hired 8 directors, extraordinarily talented directors, for each with their kind of take on a different aspect of the Olympics. And so it was Olympics was televised by ABC as well, so I went to Munich to be part of this production, and I was staying in the Olympic Village, and one morning, I don't know, 5 or 6 in the morning, they banged on my door because the Israeli compound inside the village had been taken over by terrorists, and that day unfolded with the horrible result that 9 of them, I think I'm right, died in a kind of fiasco of them trying to be rescued.
As an ABC executive, did you want to pull coverage of the Olympics after that?
No, absolutely not. As a matter of fact, what happened is that there was, of course, should the Olympics just cease? I mean, because of this incredible tragedy. And the Olympic Committee decided that they'd have one day, I think my memory's pretty good on this, one day of remembrance, and then in the spirit of the Olympics, they would continue. And ABC absolutely went along with it. I, on the other hand, couldn't wait to get out of Germany. It was such a heinous, threatening episode that I fled.
Back then, 3 networks, ABC, NBC, CBS.
Yeah.
We all watched the same programs. We had a shared experience. Was that a positive?
Oh, yeah. Listen, again, it's hard probably for people who didn't grow up in it, but given today, there is so much optionality. There are hundreds, thousands. But at that time, mass communications, there were only 3. And so, you know, when people say gathered around the hearth as a family.
All watched Roots.
Watched, yes, for 11 nights, 100 million people watched Roots. And almost the entire US population. And that's binding. The values get inculcated there. All sorts of shared experience takes place. And that's gone. And I think it's stupid in a way to be against progress or to think back on the olden days as being better, et cetera. And in some respects, they were certainly not better. I mean, we've made progress in so many areas, year after year, decade after decade. However, we have lost the tying fabric in this country, and we've lost it to so many voices that political separateness defines us. Whereas before, while you would agree or disagree or whatever else, you weren't banging that drum so definitively and harshly as we do today. And I think that's too bad. I mean, it's too bad. We are fraying as a country, for sure.
In 1974, somebody said to you, your pants are too short.
75.
75. Who was that, and actually, where were you?
Well, I was in New York City, and I'd just become chairman of Paramount, and I went to a dinner that my close friends had given for me. And also at the dinner were Prince Egon von Furstenberg and his wife, Diane von Furstenberg. And I was kind of awkward because it was it was a very high-toned group. And I was feeling like, what am I really doing here other than I was the guest of honor? And I was kind of sidled over to the fireplace just for a minute, and Prince Egon, who I'd never met before, came up to me and said, your pants are too short, and they were. But I also had met his wife at the time, and she treated me like cellophane, and I didn't like her either.
But you've been married to her for
20 some odd years now, and she's been in my life for 50. So
I'm going to tell this story on the air. I told a couple of young women at C-SPAN that I was interviewing Barry Diller, and they both kind of went like this. But then I said, yes, he's married to Diane von Furstenberg. And they both said, oh, the wrap dress.
Of course.
And they both wore it the next day.
Yeah.
So they could demonstrate to me what it was.
Well, you didn't know what a wrap dress was? Yeah, I'm sure you must have. I mean, it's this classic that it is still relevant 50 years later is just a shocker, but there it is.
And she is a designer.
She is a designer, yes. She's many, many things, but she's definitely a designer.
How would you describe your relationship after 50 years?
There's no description for it other than thank God.
How does the gay thing play into that, Mr. Diller?
It doesn't have any relationship to it. My relationship with Diane was not anything other than an explosion between us. And the fact that I also like guys never had anything to do with it. There's never been any conflict with it or around it. Diane is and our family is the great good luck of my life. But I didn't enter into it it was not an aspiration of mine at all. It was an accident, but it happened.
You devote several pages, or a good chunk of your book, Who Knew?, to Studio 54 and the iconicness of that era.
Yeah. It's amazing. You know, most people think, oh, well, that must have been around for a long. It was only 2 years. You know, and the amazing thing that it's still actually, when you say Studio 54, people have a word bubble of what that was, is just quite shocking because it was so brief, but it was also, it was a moment in time. It was 1978, and it was a period before AIDS. It was a period before a lot of other complications. People felt a particular license to explore all sorts of things. And Studio was this incredible, safe environment where when you were inside it, you just felt safe and free to do almost anything. Now, I'm not pushing this into dark or strange areas because it really wasn't very much that. There were drugs, but they weren't. It wasn't some, den of drugs or whatever. People did do drugs, but not everybody. And it wasn't wildly sexual. It was just this kind of convening place that every person of either beauty, fame, wealth, whatever, from all over the world convened in this one place every night for 2 years.
And were you there every night?
Yeah, almost. Not every.
You sound rueful about that.
But I'm here today is a shock, given I was there so many nights. I mean, what does astound me is that me and my friends, kind of, I guess, somewhat core group of Studio, and I probably 3 or 4 nights, I doubt more than that, could have been some weeks more than that, but we would go to Studio at 11, 12 at night, stay till 3 or 4 in the morning, and get up at 8 and go to work. Now, how did I survive that? I don't know how, but it seems like, because I'm sitting here, I must have.
What were you working as?
I was the chairman of Paramount.
During those days?
During those years, yeah.
And
so I was fully employed.
At the opening night, you were refused entry.
The opening night, which was a party for Bianca Jagger, Mick Jagger's wife at the time, and a group of us had gotten there, and it was a madhouse, and of the 6 people in my car, 5 of them were face famous. And we got to the door, and I was the last one, because They were in my car, and so I politely pushed them in front. And it got to me, and well, you can't come in. So I went back to my car.
And you were chairman of Paramount.
Yeah. But I wasn't known by face at the time. Anyway, I went back to my car and thought somebody will come and rescue me, and nobody came for a while. So I almost, like I actually said to the driver, let's go, and then they came and got me and apologized profusely.
Barry Diller, were you a participant in the drug taking at Studio 54?
No, I really wasn't. Because of my own background, because my brother was addicted to drugs, I would. Did I even then smoke marijuana? I think I'd stopped by then. But the drug of choice at the time was cocaine, and no, not me.
And C-SPAN's Q&A podcast continues in a moment. Your brother, what happened to him?
My brother, who, I don't have a lot of sympathy because he was quite aggressively mean to me, always. So I wish I could conjure up sympathy for his very difficult life. But he was on drugs when he was 13, 14. By 15, he was on heroin. And so he had a very difficult time being addicted to it and then getting off it and then going back and forth, until when he was 36, he was shot and killed. So it's a terrible story.
And you write that you really haven't forgiven him.
I know, my wife, Diane, keeps saying to me, of course you forgive him, yeah, I can say, of course, okay, I forgive him, but what am I forgiving him for? I mean, he was very tough on me when we were growing up, abusive, physically abusive, and he, more than that, because that I don't really remember very much, but what I do remember is how he co-opted my parents' life, because ever since the day that he was really addicted, say 15 years old, for at least the next 10 years or so, it was the great burden of my parents' life. I mean, of course it was, to say the least, burdensome for him, but it affected their life so unfairly because they tried, of course, every which way to help him, get him out of it, do whatever, and they had the resources to do those things. But I probably am mostly unforgiving for how he took away at least a decade or two of my parents' life.
Barry Diller, did you ever officially come out?
This is, again, why this title resonates with me. I thought everybody knew about my life. I never made a declaration for a whole host of reasons. I wish I had, probably, but I can go on and on about the circumstances as to why. But over endless number of years, everybody knows about my life. I never was hiding away, or I never pretended to be something that I wasn't. That was very important to me, that I not lead a hypocritical life. And yet, so the whole concept of that for me, I mean, when I wrote this book, people said, oh, he's finally coming out. And I thought, I'm 83 years old. Are you serious? To who, for what?
You do write, though, that you had some guilt during the AIDS era for not being a quote-unquote role model.
It's true. I definitely, I could have done things that would have been more supportive, although I was certainly financially supportive of helping people with AIDS and founding groups that help people with AIDS, et cetera, et cetera. But I didn't think I was a good poster boy. That's maybe some deception of my own that I feel guilty about. I should have, and I didn't.
By the way, you're living in New York City now, or your main residence is in New York City.
Part-time.
Are you a face? Can you walk anonymously down the street?
Not much. I mean, yeah, occasionally I can, but I've lived here for a while, and we do a lot of public things, so yeah.
Does it surprise you when people stop and say, hey,
No,
Barry?
the one thing I discovered this a long time ago, really, when I got known, where, and this is true of anybody, anybody who's got that word, so some face known, is people are so nice. I've never had anybody do anything but kind of cheer me on. And this is before this book came. This is years ago when I started getting known. And when people recognize you, generally they're happy to see you. It makes them happy. And they reflect it to you. And how could that be anything but nice? Now, yes, if you have superstardom fame and people kind of grab at you or interrupt your dinner or do whatever, it can maybe be irritating. But oh my God, on the whole, what could be nicer than you're making people happy when they see you?
Who gets stopped more? Diane von Furstenberg?
Diane. Well, Diane's, absolutely, yes. She's been that way for many, many years.
I think my favorite character in your book, Charles Bluedhorn.
Oh God, yes.
Who was he?
Charlie Bluedhorn was probably one or two, maybe, of premier industrialists of the 60s and 70s. And he had a conglomerate called Gulf Western, which owned everything from Paramount Pictures to the zinc mines and sugar plantations and insurance. I mean, a huge number of businesses. And he was an Austrian immigrant, and he was a great character who unfortunately died young at the age of 56. And he's the person who brought me to Paramount.
You call him the electric grid, or the energy on the electric grid.
Yeah.
What was he like to deal with?
You couldn't be in a room with him. He had such voracious ambition and energy, and his reach and his grasp were so large that you couldn't be in a room with him where he wouldn't try and buy something or sell something. You and whatever else, a chair, a rug, a whatever. And he was just an exciting personality, combustible, a romantic, as businessman, a brilliant mind that could add, divide, multiply in boxcar numbers, but also with great empathy and humanity, and somewhat crazy.
There is a show that has nearly 900 episodes on the air. It is still airing today.
Yeah.
Do you have a personal responsibility for that show?
The Simpsons?
Yes.
Yes, I do. I didn't create it. Jim Brooks and Matt Groening did, but we took a risk and took it from its little cartoon state at the time into making it into a half-hour animated television show, which is probably, I mean, arguably, factually, the most profitable single entertainment product ever created.
And it
in any sphere, form.
So were you in on the inception of Fox as a network as well?
Yes, it was Fox. We started this fourth network, which is something I'd always wanted to do. When there were three networks, I thought there should be a fourth. I thought there should be an alternative to the three. And so we started Fox, and The Simpsons was in our, I think, second year, end of our second year it went on. And it didn't define Fox, but Fox was an alternative, edgy. The concept was to do an alternative network that was edgier than the three. Simpsons certainly qualified for that. But it's quite amazing that it has gone on as long as it has. It's an enormous credit to Mr. Brooks and Groening, both of them primarily, I think Brooks though, for its longevity and the fact that it's still as good as it ever was. That's shocking.
So that says that you've known Rupert Murdoch for 30, 40 years. How would you describe your relationship?
I'm very fond of Rupert Murdoch.
Friend and competitor?
We've never been, I guess in some ways we were in competitive arenas, but Rupert had bought into 20th Century Fox after I had been there just a couple of months. And so we began an 8-year association, which was in every way utterly wonderful. He was a great collaborator in that he's one of the great gamblers, one of the great entrepreneurs, really, willing to bet the company, happy to bet his company for putting something together that hadn't been done before. And so he gave us the resources to start Fox, the Fox Broadcasting Network. And I greatly admire him. We do not agree politically. We're not in the same sphere. And I am not a fan of Fox News, which 2 years after I left was started by Murdoch, by Fox and Mr. Murdoch. But his many, many world pursuits transcends that.
Well, somebody who was on this program a couple of weeks ago, who describes himself as a libertarian, John Malone.
Yes.
Quote, Barry Diller is one of the best. Why do you think he says that?
Well, we'd have to ask him. I don't. John Malone and I have been associated. He's been up until a few years ago, he was my principal business partner after I left Fox. John Malone is clearly the smartest person in any room, still. Always was, probably always will be.
Ted Turner.
Ah, Ted, yes, the Ted Turner.
That's kind of the same reaction I got from John Malone.
Well, again, classic. I wish we had more of them, these outsized personalities, particularly ones that do so much good, and Ted Turner in so many areas and ways did so much good. I mean, in founding, at the time, this 24-hour news network, that he wanted to have the highest journalistic principles, not be politicized, but to be a great world resource. And it is probably, worldwide, it's probably the biggest, quote, news brand in the world, because it's distributed all over. You can't go anywhere in the world. You turn on a television set and there's CNN. A great, also, character.
Barry Diller, do you think you have the same drive or willingness to bet the company that some of these men that we've spoken about have?
Well, I don't know about drive. I have unending curiosity and certainly a good amount of ambition. I'm still curious. I don't know that I'm very ambitious. I mean, it'd be a little ridiculous, but I'm definitely curious and I want to stay engaged. And so that's what keeps the motor running.
You refer to our current era as a time of tech overlords, that we have tech overlords today. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think media, which since its inception, mass media, was it was very much consistent with the progress of the country itself, in that the movie business was dominated by immigrants who came to the U.S. And as immigrants do, they emulated the mythology of America that was extremely strong and good and positive in so many different respects. And that dominated the culture for 100 years, something like that, where those media businesses were all controlled by people who grew up in media, whether it was in the making of programs or in journalism or in anything you want to, capital M media, put in that bucket. That's what they did. That's what they knew. That's what they were trained for. Those are the values that they had. Well, about 10 years or so ago, big tech, and that's Netflix, a tech company, Amazon, a tech company, Apple, a tech company, began to take the hegemony away from its basically founder group and dominate it. And so technology, now Hollywood, concept of Hollywood, it's not that certainly it still exists, but the hegemony Hollywood had is gone. It has been replaced by people in technology. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a different thing.
What about artificial intelligence? Does it worry you? Are you invested in it?
Well, yes, I am invested in it, not in anybody who has any kind of an enterprise, and we've got enterprises that employ many, many tens of thousands of people. It is being infused into everything we do. It is the next revolution. It cannot be discounted as probably the greatest revolution of humankind. That's such a big statement, but it's in the offing. General artificial intelligence is coming relatively soon, whether it's 3, 5, 8, more than 10 years away probably, which will affect everything. And we are all going to participate, depending upon just how old you are and how long you got. But we are all going to participate in this revolution, and it has profound effects, good and potentially bad.
Before we leave New York, we've talked about the Frank Gehry building here, yes, across from the Chelsea Piers, but the High Line,
yes,
and Little Island.
Yes, yes, yes.
Two well-known, relatively new places here in New York.
Yeah, very lucky.
What's your
well,
involvement?
It's very lucky that our family has enough resources to do some public interest, public park dreaming. And so we've supported the building of the High Line, and then we built Little Island, this floating park in the Hudson River, 3 blocks down the road from us. And 7 million people have been, this little island, have been on it since it opened a few years ago. And the greatest thing in the world is to be able to be lucky enough to do something that makes people happy.
How often do you get down there?
All the time. I ride my bike and I go visit it and wander around it. And I just have this great good luck of, there are 2 bridges linking it to the to the shore, and I get to stand anonymously, hopefully, on these bridges and watch people coming and going, and all it does is make people happy.
Barry Diller is the author of this book, Who Knew? We didn't have a chance to talk about George Lucas and Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark and some of your other history. You'll have to pick up the book to read that. Thank you for your time, and thank you for hosting us here.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Well, thanks for being with us on the Q&A podcast. Next week, our guest is Boyce Upholt, who's written a modern history of the Mississippi River.